Welcome. Good evening. Before we get started, please take out your cell phones and either turn them off or put them in silent mode. I would prefer if you turned them off. That way they don't cause, or put them on airplane mode. That way they don't interfere with the wireless system, and you're sure not to get that call that you're waiting for from Hashem, because you never know. It might happen. I've heard phone calls from Hashem at almost every service, at almost every concert. It's amazing how often Hashem calls. If we just listened, right? So tonight we're going to have two segments. The first segment is going to be a short reminiscence by Ralph Samuel, whose family was affected and was forced to flee Germany as a result of the events of Kristallnacht. And we're going to start with that. Then I'll do a brief introduction of the program and why I believe it's important, and then we'll have the program. So without further ado, Ralph, if you would grace us with your reminiscence. Thank you. I can put it in the stand.
Hello? Okay. Closer? Hello? Oh, I see. I'm Ralph Samuel. Louder? Okay. My parents were born in small towns in northern Germany near the Baltic Sea in the early 1900s. Both families had successful businesses until they had to abandon them in the early 1930s due to Nazi harassment. In 1934, my mother was encouraged by her family to move to nearby Rostock, where she got an office job. Here she met her future husband. However, due to conditions, they didn't get married until 4 years later. The office where my mother worked in Rostock was on the second floor of a building facing the street. She had worked there only a short time when the owner could no longer resist the pressure from the Nazis and had to let her go. My father came to pick her up. When he arrived at the office, my mother asked him to wait for her on the sidewalk. As he was walking down the stairs, two Nazi officers came up. Once he was outside, a large office machine that the officers had thrown out the window crashed onto the sidewalk, nearly missing him. He was then joined by my mother. My parents had just avoided a disaster. I should note that my father was tall, blond, and blue-eyed, which made him less conspicuous. He simply did not look Jewish according to the Nazi definition. They were married in August 1938, and only 3 months after their wedding, they experienced Kristallnacht. At this point, they realized that they had to prepare to leave Germany to avoid detection. They left Rostock, traveling by train to Berlin. Here they learned from their mothers, when they called home, that Nazi officers had searched their home in Rostock looking for my father. In Berlin, they would frequently move to different Jewish homes to avoid detection. At each stop, the family would give them names of other families to contact. So they worked from house to house. In some cases, the men of these homes had already been arrested. After Kristallnacht, they were taking a cab to another part of Berlin. The driver offered to give them a tour of the destroyed synagogues, shops, and Jewish homes to show them what we had accomplished. However, my parents thanked the driver and asked him to take a direct route. In the days that followed, They started exploring all possible avenues to leave Germany. By sheer coincidence, they met friends who told them that they possessed 4 tickets on an ocean liner traveling to Shanghai. Unfortunately, the couple could use only 2 of their tickets because the other 2 tickets were for their parents who were too infirm to travel. My parents immediately purchased their 2 extra tickets, and then they quickly made travel arrangements, including travel permits, train tickets to the Italian port of Genoa. Their ship left for Shanghai on February 23, 1939. By this time, they were allowed to take only $4 per person, plus possessions. They had ample funds, so they loaded their large trunks with an array of household goods. They were not allowed to take valuables, such as jewelry. Shanghai was one of the few places in the world that accepted Jews at this time. Our family lived in Shanghai through the war until 1947, when we were able to immigrate to the U.S. How do we keep our family stories going? I have spoken at the Illinois Holocaust Museum to student groups. My mother spoke here 35 years ago about her experiences. And someday I hope my daughter will speak. Finally, thank you, Cantor Goldstein, for inviting me to share our family story.
Thank you, Ralph.